if you've just joined us, welcome to the program. This is the Project Manager Clinic, and we're talking today with Margaret de Santos, and it's another Ask a Mentor session. And it's a difficult one again today, Margaret. And we've just been talking a little bit about the question. So if you're just joining us now, I'll go back through the question. But before I do, how are you, Margaret?
I'm well, thank you, and super excited to tackle this question because it's actually close to my heart, and I've actually experienced not the silence or the things that happen behind, but the I guess the leading up to what, this question and the actual reason why this person has asked this question. So I'm very happy.
It's a big question.
It is.
Yes, it's a big question. Look, I might just try and put it on the screen actually, because it's a very big question. Just 1 second and I'll do that. Now, okay, can you see that, Margaret?
Yes, I can. Yeah.
All right. So within this question, there's really a couple of questions. So it's a bit tricky, this one. I'm just going to read it out. I'm having trouble getting decisions made on my project, and they, don't know who they is, just keep drifting, and I'm worried that this will impact my delivery, which it certainly will.
Yep.
By that I mean the team decides in week 2. Then 2 weeks later, someone quietly works around it. A manager just adjusts it, or a stakeholder forgets what was agreed. Suddenly, there are 3 parallel versions of the truth and nobody remembers what the actual call was. There's a lot in both of these, which we'll come back to. The plan itself, and I'd have to ask you what plan, seems fine. But the further we go, the less inclined people are to trust the decisions because they'd been bent so many times without anyone saying, hey, are we redeciding that? Do you have any way of tracking decisions that actually sticks? Well, yes, and yes, we sure do.
That's right.
But let's just go back through this question, Margaret, because I just find this fascinating. I'm having trouble getting decisions made on my project. Well, that happens to all of us. It is a thing.
That's right. It's actually It's actually one of the top 10 decisions reasons why projects fail.
Yeah.
Is because you can't get a decision made.
And I will tell you later how I took matters into my own hands quite drastically. But of course, it's going to impact this person's delivery. You can't just let it keep drifting. And we will talk about some of those things in a minute. But this is what really gets me about this one. The team decides in week 2, then 2 weeks later, someone quietly works around it. A manager adjusts. All right, I'm going to stop sharing that because it's really, quite frankly, starting to depress me. And we were just talking before about it sounds like it's agile, and you were talking a bit about that.
It does, and exactly. I obviously was a project manager for an agile project where there was changes that were requested by the business, and because I knew after 2 weeks that this small change would take the development team 2 to 3 days, and including testing by the business analyst, I knew that 2 weeks, there was already 2 days worth of changes, which I had to get approved.
Yeah. You're eating away already. Yeah.
And I knew that if I did not actually start tracking these changes and getting approval for these changes, I knew that when this project was finished, that it would be very late. So I had to get the approvals done at that point. And that's what I started doing. I started tracking the scope changes where the business had requested that they didn't like the font or they didn't like the position of where, we were doing website changes. They didn't like the position of, where a question was on the form. It needed to go at the end instead of the beginning. And so all these little changes here and there meant that in the end, there was a 3-month period of delay, which had been approved because I managed to document every single change, how long each change was going to take, from which team and which resources, how much it was going to cost, because that also then requires approval for a budget change, and then get the business who were paying for these changes to approve the changes. So I was eternally grateful that I had initially thought I better start tracking these changes.
Yes.
And so was the program director. He said, Margaret, did you start recording some of these changes in a change form? And I said, of course, and I've got them approved.
Yeah.
And when he took it to, the steerco, he was absolutely covered because the business had approved all of the changes. And so there was no delay on our end, on the technology end. So,
and I think I'd have to ask this person, well, I mean, it's hard to believe that somebody's still got this conundrum and calling it a project manager question, because this is just absolutely not project management. If you're going to, you don't just let stuff drift. As you said, you take an action and do some change requests and get it approved. And we're going to talk a bit later about stakeholder silence, which is part of this. I wonder if this person is maybe not a project manager, but is a project manager, and I've met lots of them, that feels constrained or shy or doesn't feel that they can go and talk to their stakeholders in a meaningful way that says, look, we've got to have this decision now. And instead of doing that, they've shied away from it because the project team's taken over here, haven't they? Like they're doing, the project team decides. Those three words, the team decides. Whose project is this?
So in an agile project, the actual Scrum team do actually decide who are going to do what. But when there is an actual physical budget and there's a timeline delivery and you've got to deliver, certain, like when I was managing the websites, we had to deliver it for the business who were basically delivering it for a client so that the client could log on and all their members could log on. So it was like time constraint, and it was actually very sensitive the time because they had made a promise to the client that the website would be ready. So it was on me to make sure that there was no delays, that if there was a change, it would be approved. And so if the business were not happy with certain things that happen on a website, they had to basically approve the delay, because at the end of the day, they had to basically deliver the website to the client and make sure that they were happy with it.
Yeah.
So, if it meant that it was going to push out the delivery of the website to the client and it was a very minor change, it might have meant then that the business could decide, oh, we better not do this change right now. We'll do it later after the client has had an opportunity to basically use the website. So in this instance, I think potentially, I don't know for sure, but the person who's probably supposed to be the project manager may not be the project manager, maybe the Scrum Master or someone that's appointed in the group and does not have actual control over the management of the project. Like you said.
Yeah, and it's a bit like the conversation we just had, Margaret, when some organisations are expecting the project manager to be a number of different roles. So potentially, like you're saying, this is the Scrum Master and they're left with managing the project, and that's why they don't have those project management techniques and tool sets. I find this really interesting too. A manager just adjusts it, or a stakeholder forgets what was agreed. Well, to you and I, this is fundamental project management. But it's even more than that. It's meeting etiquette. If you're in a meeting and people are saying, well, we're going to do this, we're going to do that, it's minuted. And I
That's
don't know
right.
about you, but often meetings aren't minuted anymore.
That's right. And a lot of formalities have actually gone out. And I know that, just to make sure that things run a lot faster and quicker, they might have AI generated meeting notes
Yeah,
where there's an AI meeting taker.
sure.
And, that's extracted and then potentially checked for verification by the person that's hosting the meeting to make sure that it's,
Yeah,
because a lot of times words are transposed because the AI generated bot hasn't actually understood what the context was about, if it's, acronyms or something specific to
true.
the actual,
Yeah,
industry. And so it transposes words that actually don't make sense into the meeting notes. So it's
mm,
really important that the person that's, checking the meeting notes is verifying that the accuracy of the meeting notes. But also, you want to make sure that decisions that are made are actually registered. And
yeah,
we have a RAID register for that, which is the risks, actions, issues, decisions, and dependencies in some
yeah,
organisations. And so you actually note the decisions in the decision register, because sometimes those decisions actually then affect your iron triangle, your cost, your timeline, your scope. So
yeah,
if there's a decision that's made, it really needs to be approved properly. If it's an agile project, then you'd probably, which I have in the past, basically ask the project owner, who's the beneficiary of the product or the whatever we're delivering, in the event that you can't get a hold of the sponsor or the sponsor has delegated the authority to the project owner. Now, in and for agile projects, it would typically just be the one. When you start getting cross-functional owners, then it's really a hybrid or basically waterfall type
yeah,
project. And in that case, I would defer the decision for the steering committee so that the department heads or the project owners, who may be multiple because they're all department heads of the benefit of whatever the project's going to be, would make the decision, and or the sponsor. So
mm,
there is actually no reason why, and I can see why this person has asked the question, and I feel like this person, like you said, is probably, I call it a splayed, where
yeah,
they're probably a subject matter expert.
yeah,
They've been asked to do the Scrum Master role. They've been asked to do the project manager role. They're allowing other people to make decisions when that may not be correct.
yeah,
It's not really up to a developer or a business analyst or someone else, a tester in the group, to make the decisions. It's really up to the business, the recipient of the product or whatever's being
yeah.
delivered, to make the decision, or the sponsor.
And the project manager needs to know what decisions need to be made. So by having everybody doing all sorts of things on this project, and it actually says here, suddenly there are three parallel versions of the truth because nobody remembers what the actual call was. Um, Again, like you said, basic project minutes, that's a key thing. Understand what decisions have been made.
Mm,
If the decision needs to go to the steering committee, then do that, but needs to be documented however you might want to do that. And it doesn't always have to now mean in a Word document. There's lots of different ways to do it.
mm.
Um, but what's the other thing that's concerning is they say the plan itself is fine, but the further we go, the less inclined people are to trust the decisions because there's been so many times when decisions have been made and they're redeciding it. So that's a symptom of a larger problem, I
That
think,
is,
isn't it?
yeah. It's almost like the controls aren't in place, the cat's out of the bag,
Yeah,
everything's being run amok, and
mayhem.
mayhem, there's no
Yep.
controls, and no understanding about who actually makes a decision. As not everyone can make a decision. The project managers can actually put forward a best case scenario, but at the end of the day, they don't make the decision. It's really the sponsor or the project owners that make the
Yep.
decisions.
Yep.
So, you can always put your recommendations forward. It's like when you're writing a business case, you have options put forward in the business case, and if the project manager's basically drafting the business case, they can say, okay, which would be the preferable option, and these are the costs
Yep.
associated with this. So it's a bit similar in that the project manager, or it can put forward the reasons why something should go in some way, but it's really up to the end of the day for the project owner or the sponsor to make that decision.
Now, for those watching, there is a presentation that Margaret has done on this, and it will go on the website later with details in the description. But I'm jumping to this slide that you've done because it sort of says everything. Weak decision governance or communication.
Yeah,
So can you just talk a little bit about this one? I know that some of these things you've touched on, but this is really key, isn't it? That governance that we talk about in project control.
that's right. And I mean, that point that I've just put in there, just to basically clarify that, there's weak governance here, in that if any team member then goes ahead and starts proceeding without proper approval,
Yeah.
I mean, that needs to be called out as an issue. You can't just go
Yep.
ahead and do something without it being approved by the sponsor or the project owner, basically the
Yep.
committee.
Yep.
And if it's an agile project, it would typically, like I said, be the one department or the one, group that's
Yep.
basically receiving the benefit. And so it'd probably be the one sponsor and business owner. If the sponsor can, basically allocate the decision making to the project owner, then that you would refer to the project owner to get approval. And that's exactly what I did when I was running the digital type websites, and it worked perfectly.
Worked a treat. You know what? I think this middle comment that you've got here, communication to the team with respect to respecting the project boundaries, because this project seems to have gone completely into chaos, and that poor person that's trying to lead it. So we need to roll it all back. I mean, I would have probably a little bit of a meeting where I'm saying to people, okay, we're just going to reset this now and talk to them about how it's going to work. But I can do that because I've got that sort of personality and I'm a bit intimidating anyway. But for people like this person, they don't have maybe that gravitas, and they also don't, by the looks of things, have the experience in project management. So where are they going to go is the thing, because it looks like this poor person is just being swept along without, any guardrails really.
Yeah,
Now
exactly.
we've got a number of tools that they can utilise, but I think before they even get to that, they've got to sit down and think about, well, where am I going? Is this a role that I should be in? Should I be somewhere else? Should I push back? Have I got the right sort of personality for this? Um, if they're not experienced at project management, ask, go and say to their sponsor, look, this is really not my field. I need help, but this is the issue, and literally this is the issue, that things are happening all over the shop. Because we know that there are tools, you and I, Margaret, know that there are tools. One of them is the issues management. But not everybody knows this sort of stuff. Is there some other advice that you could give this person of where to start and how to start rolling this back?
Yes, because I mean, I would have set the boundaries up from the start. So it's a bit
Yeah.
hard now to basically put the boundaries in after the cat's out of the bag. It's like trying to reel in the cats into a
Yep.
bag.
Yep.
And so, I mean, I have in the past, sent out a general communication when things haven't gone the way that it should,
Yep.
and basically to especially communication where the project manager is the one that's communicating generally to the team, and people are going off doing their own thing or saying their own thing, and the communication isn't being centralized. So again, that would be something for that person if they are the project manager. Look, it seems to me like they're a bit out of their depth.
Yes.
They're not,
Absolutely. A
they don't,
lot, I would say.
yeah, a
A lot
lot.
out of
They
their
don't
depth.
know
Yep.
that, the guardrails and basically having to do change control, recording decisions, getting them approved.
Mm.
So, I mean, you'd have to basically set it straight and, like you said, draw a line in the sand and say, okay, from this point forward, you can't just go ahead and make changes. If you do, I'm going to report it into the steering committee as an issue.
Yep.
That's
And
how you would do it.
I've just put this slide up here
Yeah.
because I'm not just in project management land, but quite often um, I've met someone or someone's come to me and said, "My job, I've got way too much work to do. I can't cope. I'm having all these issues," and I always say to them, "Look, it's like a bit like a log, but do a status report for your
Mm,
manager. You only need to include these couple of things." And do it for maybe 2 weeks. Like make a note of what's going on, because unless your manager knows what's going on, they don't know what's going on. Um, and we're talking in this slide about reporting, dashboarding, and the steering committee. And whilst there's some project management technical terms in here, Margaret, which I'll get you to go through in a second, the key message for this person who's sent us the question is do a status report, put it down in paper or wherever you want, whatever technology you want, but get it sorted out in your head and then go
mm,
to your sponsor and say, this is where we're at. Because that's what we do as project managers. And you've got here reporting dashboard steering committee. So can you just
mm.
go through a couple of those things?
Sure. So, I mean, the first point I've got there is you're basically reporting, you're basically showcasing what you've done, what you're going to do in the upcoming period, and you're
Yeah,
basically reporting it to the stakeholders to let them know what's going on. You would include like high level risks and basically any high level issues and how you're addressing those issues. You're not necessarily asking for feedback in terms of getting the issues resolved. That's really your job to do that. And it's basically reporting.
mm,
And then the second point there I've got is for agile reports or projects, you're reporting on, because normally with an agile project, you've got like a lot of tickets or a lot of the items that need to be done. How quickly are they being, completed, started,
yeah. What's
finished?
the throughput? How fast are they
Yes,
getting it
and
done?
so
Yeah,
that's
yeah,
that's really what the burn down
yeah,
chart
yeah,
shows, and how many, period this basically how many sprints you've got for the whole delivery of the product or the system or whatever you're doing, how many sprints you've completed and then how many you've got left, so
yeah,
that it gives an indication to all the stakeholders where you're at. Are you 50% through? Are you a third through? Things like that. Change control, and we just spoke about that. Perfect example of when things just are requested to be changed, but there's when there's an actual change in scope, you don't like the font, or you don't like, where something's positioned on somewhere,
yeah,
that also takes time and it takes money. And so you've got to actually report the changes and also the iron triangle changes that are, relevant
yeah.
to that change. Oh,
I'm
and then the
sorry,
last,
Sorry, I just took that off because I thought the last one we can pretty much talk to. Yeah, sorry.
Yeah, sure. And I mean, when you're getting any approvals in a waterfall hybrid type scenario, you would actually provide that in a steering committee pack and get that approved and get that agreed by all the
Yeah.
stakeholders, all the project owners of the different business units. In an agile, if the delegated authority from the sponsor has been given to the project owner, then you would get them to actually approve the change, approve the budget change as well. So, and timeline. So it's I mean, it's pretty much you're not keeping a secret.
No,
Things aren't being hidden.
no.
It's all being open. It's all being transparent. You're
Yeah.
actually voicing it to everybody. You're telling all the stakeholders. You're getting approval. You're getting the decision recorded. You're basically reporting it on a dashboard. There is nothing hidden, and there is no qualms about what the decision that was made because
So,
it's
because
recorded.
for you and I, this is project management bread and butter.
That's right.
Um, so, and I've been in places too where they've got no status reports. Staggering in 2025, I know, but still, if you're in an organisation that doesn't have a project management culture and they don't really understand what it's all about, then we as project managers will put those things in place. For this person, though, as we said, they don't sound like they've got project management training, and even agile projects, which we looks like they're in, burn down chart. What I would say to them is remove all the lingo, all the buzzwords and things like that. Some stakeholders don't understand agile. They don't know. They don't care. I don't
Yeah.
care about your burn down. Just tell me what my deliverables have been agreed and where are we. So what are we getting delivered and what's coming next? I don't want to know all the lingo stuff. So it's horses for courses, really, in some of those things. Status report can be very simple. I've recovered projects where I've done a daily status report in an email. Very, very simple. It's only going to one person though, because I'm recovering a big project. So try and think about, if you're this person that's asked us a question, try and think about what is the position that you're in, and then what actions you might need to take to get out of it. If you don't know what actions you need to take to get out of it, you may need to seek help from someone. That's your manager, maybe HR, maybe another peer, but somebody to take an action. But you've got to understand what you're doing and delivering first. And maybe the scope's not been very nailed down by the sounds of things in the first place.
Yeah, and I have been in organizations where we've engaged a vendor and they have done it agile. And so with agile, the scope's fluid. And because it was time and materials, obviously any changes they were trying to basically capitalize on that and
Yeah,
charge us more. So I think what the sponsor did then was he said, we're pretty much nailed what the scope should be and what it should look like. We're going to tell the vendor how it should be, what it should look like, and basically there should be no changes or very little change to
yeah,
basically what they're delivering. And so that made it a lot easier. It's like documenting your business requirements really. And
yeah,
so it basically was saying, this is what we want, this is what we expect, very little change.
yeah,
And if you do have any questions, give us a call or whatever before they start, billing us for stuff that we don't want or gold plating stuff, giving us
yeah,
extra things that we don't need
yeah,
for the same functionality. And so, we basically set it straight and it was much easier. So easy.
yeah. I think that's a good point that you made about looking at it in terms of the business requirements, particularly for this person. Ask yourself, what does the business require for us to deliver? And it just needs to be as simple as that. Then you can go back and clarify that with your stakeholders. If you don't have your stakeholders and your sponsor, um, uh, organised, so you don't even know who they are or it hasn't been agreed, then that's something that you'll have to get agreed. If you don't feel that you can do that, seek out a change manager or somebody in that your organisation that maybe be able to help you. So again, if you're watching, please subscribe to the channel. We love to be doing these things to put a different spin on project management. I just want to talk a little bit about this stakeholder silence, which is a very nasty little thing that happens to a lot of us. It happens often. Margaret, have you had experience in this? You just can't get anything out of them.
So in terms of the business requirements, I mean, normally I've had business analysts and they have to be really great at eliciting and extracting the information from the stakeholders. And when I've hired business analysts, I've always made that's one of the questions that I ask is how do you elicit and you know, what sort of things do you do? What tactics do you do?
Make the connection.
Yeah, because a lot of them it's difficult. They say, oh, well, it's like, you should know what it should be like. And that's not an answer. You need to explain exactly what you want or what you need to be able to basically deliver what you are going to get.
Yeah.
And so this, you know what it is or, not being able to explain something. And that's why it's really important to have that, skill set in a business analyst.
And you want something that's tangible. You want them to get a requirement that is tangible. It's okay to have a feeling. So the sponsor wants to feel like they've had everything delivered at the end. Well, that's great, but that's not necessarily a business requirement. It's got to be very, very definitive. But sometimes that's up to the project manager to roll those deliverables up and make them very definitive and go back to your stakeholder, your sponsor and say, this is what we've got. Are you going to tick off that scope? And I have had experience where they go silent at that point and you can't get a response out of them. Have you had that experience?
Not really. I think because most of the projects that I've done have had business cases,
right?
And it's pretty clear in that, and they've been approved as to what is being delivered, because you've got a high level scope, what's in, what's out, and sometimes the most important thing is what's out, what we're not delivering.
Exactly.
And so because we don't want to get people's hopes up that we're going to deliver the whole world with this amount of money, it's limited to what we're delivering based on the cost and also the timeline resources that we have. So I haven't really had that they don't know but I have had the issue where the technology team believe something is being delivered, but the business is saying something totally different.
Yeah, common, very common.
Yes, and that's a project that I stepped into midway. And so what I had to do there was I had to go back to the beginning and basically do a business case or do a statement of work or do a project charter and say, okay, this is what the business need. How is technology going to deliver this particular, item?
Yeah.
And so we had to make sure that everyone was on the same page. So it had to be, basically I had to retrospectively go back to the beginning and start again.
Yeah, right. And sometimes that has to happen. I was on a project 2 years ago and 12 months into the project, it wasn't my project, fortunately, they still didn't have the scope nailed down. It was still all over the place, a bit like this here. And it's not enough to say, well, to listen to your sponsor that says, I'd like you to build a house with 4 walls, a door, 2 windows, a green roof and red walls. Because my idea of a green roof and red walls is possibly different to yours. So you still have to clarify even the most simple. So let me just tell you about my experience with my sponsor who wouldn't give me a yes, no answer. So I was program director, so I'm pretty high up in government, and we were implementing legislation, so pretty important stuff, really. um, and I would say to this person, I don't bring lots of decisions to my sponsors, right? Because I'm pretty much making the decisions because I've set up the framework for me to make decisions on a lot of stuff. But when I need a yes no answer, I need a yes no answer. And I will also set it up to say, I'm going to come to you with these sorts of questions. I need an answer. I will need an answer very quickly. And this is the sort of question I'm going to ask, and this is the way I need the answer, right? So I've already set all that up. This particular person didn't like confrontation, was very airy-fairy about, oh, well, maybe we could do it this way. No, I don't care about maybe. Yes, no answer.
Mm.
Anyway, what I finally did was I would do my questions. So I might have 5 questions. Yes, no answer. And then I sat in a chair at the doorway of their office. I said, I'm not going until you've answered these questions. Yes, no. Yes, no. I'd ask the question. They'd give me a roundabout, no, yes, no. Is it yes? Is it no? Now that I know one day that took me quite a few hours of sitting there in the doorway. Wouldn't let them go to the toilet. I wouldn't let them get a drink. I literally sat there and said, now I got my answers, right? But nobody should have to go to that degree to do that. But I can tell you after that first time, I never had to do it again.
Well, that's a good lesson that was basically learnt by the sponsor or the business owner. And
Yep.
when you were talking then, I was just thinking, should they have been the sponsor?
No, they shouldn't have
And
been.
yeah, that's
No,
right.
they
Yeah,
shouldn't have been. They were literally an SME. They shouldn't have been the sponsor because they didn't
yeah.
have a broad enough view. I raised that as a risk to the steering committee, but they couldn't do anything about it or didn't want to. So you've got to work with
Oh, I
what you've got to
see.
work with, right?
Yeah.
And that's what I had to work with. So when you've got that, and that is really stakeholder silence because you're not getting a response out of them. And if you don't think broadly enough, and we've talked a bit about this before, being creative as a project manager, thinking
Mm,
about, well, how can I get this answer? Because at the end of the day, I just want the answer. I want yes
mm,
or no so that I can keep the project moving. And you've
mm.
talked about some of the tools that we can use, like we'll raise that as a risk, we'll do these things, we'll do the other. Um, but if you need a yes no answer, that's what you need. The other option, which I've talked about many times, is you might look at the whole situation and think maybe this is not for me. I need to go and do something else.
That's right. I think that it sounds like that person may not have been the right person to
No,
make the decisions or be the sponsor.
they
But
weren't.
also, I think some sponsors are a bit tentative about what they say
Yeah,
because they're going to be hounded for the benefits realization
yeah,
at the end to
yeah,
make sure that if the business case has been approved based on their understanding of how much money revenue will be made or how much money there'll be saved as a result of putting this project in, then they'll be accountable for that. And,
exactly.
yeah,
Yep, exactly. Now I'm just going to go back to the question again because,
yeah,
as you know, it's got like 3 or 4 moving parts, this
yeah.
question. Just to revisit it before we sign off, because we've got probably another 5 minutes. I think we've probably talked to this, having trouble getting decisions made on my project.
Mm,
Don't let them drift, is what we've said.
mm,
Margaret, you've given a number of solutions to stop that drift, but you
yeah,
have to take an action. You have to
that's right.
take an action. The team decides in week 2 and then blah, blah, week, later. People forget what's agreed. Well, change control, meeting minutes, have a scope, status reports. So these are
And
fundamentals.
yep, and I would actually have a decision register, because the
Yep.
decisions are being, if they're being tabled at a steering committee and the decision is to approve something, then I would definitely record that in a register,
Yep.
because
Absolutely.
that decision will have consequent effects. It might be that there'll be additional funding required to
Yeah.
put that in place, for example. And in the
Mm.
steering committee, I would, if there's a decision to be made and it's a scope change decision or change control, you would need to then qualify what is the additional funding required
Yeah.
to
Yeah.
basically approve it, or have it go ahead.
And look, it protects the project manager.
Mm,
While some of these things sound like overkill, if you don't do status reports and start to raise things,
mm,
there's nothing that you can go back to.
mm,
Your head is on the chopping block. So all this, nobody remembers what the actual core was. That shouldn't happen because of the
mm,
tools that we've talked about. The plan itself seems fine. The less inclined people are to trust. And look, it is a question of trust and putting the framework in place for your project about how it's going to be managed. Have a session where you maybe re-explain how the thing works, re-clarify, go back to basics, make sure you've got a scope. Um, and then the last thing was, do you all have a way of tracking decisions, which you've pretty much answered, Margaret. But do they stick? Well, that's sort of up to you to make sure that they stick.
mm,
Otherwise, you raise a risk, an issue. Um, you can't keep doing that though.
mm,
If you keep raising the same risk and issue again and
mm,
again, you've got to look at your project and say, why is this not working?
mm.
What else is wrong? Because it's just a symptom then, something else.
That's right. I think what we mentioned before, this project manager was out of their depth, or maybe they
Yeah,
are someone that's been put into that position and they're really something else, subject matter
yes,
expert, or
true.
a BA, or a Scrum Master, and they've been put in this position to basically run this, project or deliverable, and they've got all these things happening around them without
Yeah,
guardrails.
yeah, without guardrails. Look,
Mm,
absolutely. And we're going to wrap up now, but hopefully that's answered all those questions. And we've tried to couch it in a way that's not particularly project manager technical. Because we didn't think that this was potentially the case with this person. If you have a question for us at the Project Manager Clinic for myself and Margaret, please go to the website. Details will be in the description below. There is a section on there, Ask a Mentor Question. You can send that through. It'll come through. It can be anonymous, no trouble about that at all. If you would like to be a presenter or someone talking to us on these sessions, please drop me a line at my email at the PM Clinic. That will be in the details below as well. And other than that, thank you, Margaret. Thanks so much.
thank you, Suzanne.
It's been a great discussion. So have a great project day and don't forget to subscribe. We'll see you next time. Thanks, Margaret.
Thanks.